Hi, this video is going to talk about the new WebClient test tool. It comes with 2023 R1. It runs as a separate WebClient service, and it lets you record a test run of your program with assertions that validate a field or a result, and then you play the test run back, either manually or you can do it automatically with a Selenium Grid, and that lets you run multiple runs so that you can load test. These are the steps that you take to run the test tool. The first thing you do is make sure that you can run your program in the web client. And then you change some settings that are specific for the test tool. And you start the test tool. You'll bring that up in the browser and you'll create a new project. You'll create a recording, work with it until it's just what you want. And then you can run that recording. If you want to do a load test, you can either download the Selenium Grid jar file, or you could use one that's online. You'll create a test suite. You'll add your recording to it, set your options, and then you can run it as many times as you want. Now, I mentioned that there were some specific settings that you needed to set in your web client application. These are the settings, and we're going to look at each one of these in the demonstration. Your web client test tool has some configurations that you can do. These are some of them on the screen here. And there are a couple of tips that I want to share and some limitations. This is the first release of the test tool, and so each new version will have more and more features and fewer limitations. You want to make sure that you run the test tool on a different server than you do your web client server, especially if you're doing load testing. You also want to make sure that you are recording and testing in a maximized window with the same resolution. Now, when you record, make sure that each new window that is displayed gets clicked on first before you try to do something on it. Activate that back window and then do your steps. There are some controls that are not fully supported with the test tool. These are the tab control with the allow container style, the scroll bars, page list boxes, and tree view controls. It often helps to use the keyboard instead of the mouse with these controls. Don't test your web client application if it's encapsulated in a web page. And don't test your user interfaces that are more complex. That's just adding too many pieces into the test process. Now, I talked about a Selenium Grid, and this is what you would use to manage running multiple runs. In the demonstration, I'm going to download the Selenium server jar and run it locally. But when you're doing your load tests, you're going to want to use a cloud service. And I just went out and looked for 3. These are not 3 that I have vetted or that I recommend, just to let you know that there are some out there. So let's go take a look at the web client test tool. So let's start by making sure that we can run the application in web client. I'm calling it MODCI, and it is on this server. So there's my link. And here it is running, showing the first. We'll go forward a couple. We have a lookup screen, and we can choose one on the lookup screen, and I can exit. And so it runs in web client. So now that we know that it runs in the web client, let's take a look at the settings that are specific for using the test tool. So we'll start with the web configuration for our MODCI. And we start with the CORS origins. I did not have that set, so I set it to a star. The security mode is going to be none. The session mode is always new session. And max connections, I'm going to set to 100. The auto logout is off. And now I'll switch to the app config. And there's an enable test mode, and I've turned that on. Okay, so our application is set up to be tested. I'm going to apply all the changes. Let's go take a look at that test tool. I've got my web client shell here locally, and I'm in the web client test tool folder. We'll take a look at the properties file, And here's what the properties file looks like. I am running localhost and I'm keeping the same ports and the same folder, so I'm not making any changes to my properties. I just wanted to show it to you. So let's run it. And it is started. And as you can see, it started locally and in port 8888. So let's go run that now. And here's our test tool. I want to start a new project. We'll call it demo. I'll click on it. And then we're going to jump right in and do a new recording. So we'll add a recording. I'm going to call it Modern CI. This is our modernization sample with the code insertion. And I'll open that up. And we'll get the web client URL, which is this. And I'm going to click on Start Recording. Now our steps are going to be over here on the left, and I'm going to click on the screen first, and then I'll click on First, go to Next a couple times, and click on Lookup to get our lookup screen. Click on that window. Now I'm going to use my arrows to go down to record 5 and enter. And it came up, and I'm going to click on the window again, and then Save, and then Exit. And we'll sign out, and then over here is my finish. All right, so I have recorded these steps, and if I wanted to, I could click here and edit the assertion, but I don't need to at this point. But I'm going to replay the test and make sure that it does what I want it to do. That looks good to me. It went through 9 steps and it passed them. So we've created our test recording and we've run it manually. Now let's run it with a Selenium Grid. So I'll click on here and I want to add a suite, and we'll call it Demo Suite. Okay? And I'll open that up. The first thing we need to do is give it the address for a running Selenium Grid. And remember, I'm going to do mine local. I've put my Selenium jar here in a folder that I know is in my class path. And I've got a startup script. I'll show that to you. It's just using Java -jar to run that jar. And I'm telling you I want to run it as standalone. So I'll click on that. And now it's running. And you can see it's running on port 4444. So let's go back to our suite, and now it says it's running. It's able to connect. So we'll go down to step 2. We're going to add a test. We're going to pick the recording that we made, Modern CI. Here's our URL, and I've already got it up once, so I'll bring that up. We don't need a name, but since we are running a test, I want to log in as admin and admin again. And it's going to run it on Windows. That's fine. With Chrome. Chrome is fine. I only have one recording. I'm only doing one test. If I wanted to, I could add a second test, maybe run it on Edge or Firefox. But I'm just going to do the one now. So we'll click on Save. And here's my test. We'll go down to the 3rd step. So here's the test tool address. I want to do a single run through, and I'll click on Start. So up here we can see it's going to run. Now it's running. And it was successful. So now let's do a load test. And I'm just going to run 2. I'm going to give it a little bit more ramp up time so one gets started and then it waits a while before the second one. Everything looks good. I'm going to start it. And I've got quite a load on my little laptop. I'm running the test tool and I'm running the Selenium Grid. This is why it's a good idea to use one that's in the cloud. I have a success for the first one and a success for the second one. And that's the Web Client Test Tool. I hope you give it a try. If you have any questions, you can contact us at support@variant.com. Thank you.